Hey guys, Eric and Roth here to talk about the penultimate episode of Breaking Bad. I love that word. Love it. Last week was so insane, and there's still the finale to go, so I thought maybe this would be a quiet episode. Maybe it would be like a weird esoteric episode even. And it was quieter comparatively, and yet
full of bloodshed and mayhem and
full
death.
of chaos, sadness, horrific things, heartbreak.
Wonderful imagery, symbolism, metaphors, you name it, it's got it. Let's start with the title, The Granite State. I mean, I feel like that's such a great... It was really interesting. I was sitting there going, you know what we never came back to? Gray matter.
Yeah.
I was picturing that scene in my head of when he was in his innocence and his passion, sort of speaking to Gretchen about chemistry and what it meant to him, and thinking we never came back to that. And 2 minutes later, we did. Thank you, Vince Gilligan.
Everything, it all percolates up again. The thing throughout this series, that Walt's hubris always gets the best of him. It's always causing his downfall and causing downfall for other people. So in this episode, for instance, Saul again gives him an out. Says, "Why don't you just come clean?" And that will really free Skylar. You tried last week, but now we're seeing that it's not that simple. That she's got no money. That everyone still thinks she's guilty of something. But he won't do it. Again, it has to be on his terms.
Yeah, I think it's that you really see Saul's pragmatism set against Walt's vanity in that moment, and it's really sad. It's like somebody who had been an A-list star still acting up when it's sort of over for them.
Right.
And they don't get it yet, and they can't get away with the shenanigans anymore.
Yeah.
And he says it's over, and that was such a beautiful moment where he can't even get the threat out because he's coughing because it's really, really done. And the whole illusion of Heisenberg is starting to crumble because that's all it was. And the truth of the ugliness of what he is and what he is engaged in is coming out. It doesn't feel heroic anymore.
Oh, no, not at all.
Not in any single way. I mean, anybody that sort of still feels that way, I'm confused by, because I think that the true grit and horror of just the meth trade also has come to the forefront.
Yeah, and you mentioned, the gray matter thing. It's like, once again, though, that is what lights the fire under him.
Oh, yeah.
Once again, seeing these people taking his credit away.
Dismissing him as irrelevant.
Right, dismissing him as relevant. And there's two things going on. They are dismissing what he has done as far as gray matter is concerned. In the same conversation, it's pointed out to him that his meth, the blue meth, is being circulated, and he knows he's not the one behind it. So you have to wonder how much both those things are now fueling him. His anger over the fact that they're acting like he wasn't important to gray matter, and the fact that someone else is getting credit for his meth now.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, again, it's like that granite state in Walt, that unmovable part of him is the part of him that feels so wounded and insignificant because he made this horrible, horrible decision. It's that point in your life where you cut off your nose to spite your face because you're so young and stupid you think that it'll come back around again, but it's not. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you blew it. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's the same drive. Hubris drove him in that moment.
Yeah.
Screw you, I'm good enough, I don't need you, I'll take your $3,000 and I'll make an even bigger company. But you won't. You won't. And even in that moment when he's showing off to Gretchen and it's sort of innocent, he's still showing off.
Right.
He's so showy. And he's so wounded in that place. And every single time one of them tries to get out of this prison they've created for themselves, Jesse or Walt, that they deserve, they just make it worse.
Once again, though, huge credit to Bryan Cranston and Vince Gilligan and the writers, of course, for creating a character who has nuance as Walter White, a character who it really hit me in the scene where he talks to Walt Jr. on the phone. Because it's, he's trying one last time. I'm going to get you this money, at least a small amount of the money, and is completely rejected, completely, is told by his son that you are a monster to me. And I thought such a spectacular scene because I both felt you were getting what you deserve, and I felt a little bad for him. That was the combination of like how good his performance is and how much we know Walt has this fully formed character that has completely, he does deserve this treatment, and yet at the same time we're like, this is a tragic story of what he has done to himself and his life and his family.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to feel compassion because it really, as bad as he is, and he's terrible, it's a lot to lose.
Yeah.
And I think that was the other great thing about the Charlie Rose moment, because it illustrated everything that he had lost and where he's coming from, because imagine if you lost that much.
Yeah.
I've never had an opportunity like that,
Right.
but it would haunt me too, probably.
I had 75 million, but not 80, so yeah.
It would take a big person to move past that. It would take a Buddha-like person, I think, to just move past that and be okay with it,
Right.
being a chemistry teacher. But it also illustrated how far he's come, and in the fact that he thinks that this is his life's work, that he really believes that this meth empire was his second chance to give his children a legacy, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just all crumbled around him. It's done, it's destroyed. And he can't, what I love too is that moment where he couldn't see, because that's so accurate of the person that he is. He literally just can't see what's right in front of him. You know, he says, look around, it's beautiful if you look at it. But he can't even see what's beautiful in its simplicity.
Oh no! He's this is a kind of the very saddest portrayal we'd ever seen of Walter White as just sort of a pathetic creature, as you said. It's like, you know, he's basically dying there in this cabin for most of the episode, and it's just, and he's got this barrel of money that's completely worthless, you know, at this point. Let's talk though about our
donning the cap of Heisenberg.
But, yeah, which when it means nothing at that point, you know. But we'll see what happens in the finale if that cap will be important one last time. Let's talk about Todd. Amazing how scary this character is. It's such a depiction of a guy who's just blank behind the eyes. And it's almost like that whole thing, it's like he's almost a better Dexter than Dexter in some way, as far as the original depiction of Dexter as a guy who is faking human emotion. That's what I feel about Todd, is like he knows what he's supposed to say and he knows how he's supposed to respond, so he's a very polite boy. And but it's so creepy because everything he does, like even he commits such atrocious acts, and you know, it's. I didn't think they would go as far as they went with him actually killing Andrea in front of Jesse like that. And again, just, you know, nothing personal, and he says it in such a blank way, and we know he means it. I think such a great villain, and they did such a good job in the final season of, you know, giving us someone to be so scared of.
Well, and I think too, it's like, oh, as if it being not personal makes it all the better.
Right.
She's still
fine.
dead, and
Yeah.
her son's still about to find a body.
Right.
Most likely, poor Brock. My God, he's been shafted more than anyone on the show. I mean, I think Todd to me is, I submit, one of the most villain chillins.
Billing chillins.
Billing chillins.
That's the cool new term we're all going to use. Yeah.
Along with Protagavillain, which I coined yesterday. Right. He is one of the most chilling villains that we've ever seen. He is in cold blood, personified. You know. But it's really interesting because people say he is the evil version of Jesse, right?
Right.
To me, it's like Walt has sort of had 4 possible proteges or de facto sons, and that is, in a way, Gale, but he was irrelevant very quickly and dismissed. Jesse, Walt Jr., and, of course, Todd. And he is, and all of those sort of, when you put them all together, they create the totality of who Walter is.
Right.
You know, of who the complex person that he is. And the evil that he unleashed with Todd, I feel like, is Mike's final FU, because he's the one that vetted him and then introduced them and got them together.
Yeah,
you know?
And just so scary, so creepy, and yet then he's like, "Here's some ice, here's some Ben and Jerry's. Oh,
here's
thank you so
America.
much."
And he's like picking lint off Lydia's shirt. Yeah, it was Americana Dream, which I thought was another great, you know, not so subtle but wonderful metaphor for what this was all about.
And so once again, you know, we talked about this last week, but once again, still in play, this major sort of question now with the end coming next week is the fate of Jesse, I feel.
Yeah, the fate, even more in a way than the fate of Walt at this point, because I think the big question for viewers is on that sliding moral scale. Do we feel that everyone deserves the severe punishment that they're now receiving? Or do we want to see Jesse at least break free of it?
Yeah.
But every time they try to avoid taking responsibility, they just make matters worse. So I can only imagine what's going to happen with that ricin.
Right.
Everyone gets it. For you and you and you and you.
Ricin for everyone. We'll see one more week. I know you guys have plenty to say about this episode and plenty of theories about the next one. Let us know in the comments. We'll be back next week to talk about the final episode of Breaking Bad.